So again, thank you for coming. And what a fantastic panel to start off our Durango Diaries with. I think most of you in this room know these folks, but we'll go ahead and do introductions anyway. So we're all wearing bluish. I love it. Duane Smith. In case you don't know. Most people in this town know him, a local historian, and we might call him a bit of a legend. He moved to Durango in 1964 and has spent 50 years teaching at Fort Lewis College before he retired, and the inaugural member of the Center for Southwest Studies, where he inspired thousands of students, a number of whom I'm guessing are in this room. He's an author of 75 books, 2 of which we are selling over there, published by our small press. Including one on the history of the Durango Herald, which I adore. Thanks, Duane. He's now retired, still writes, and spends his time writing, talking about local history, and focusing on 2 of his favorite topics, mining and baseball, mainly the Cubs, which he joked may not really be baseball. His writings are love letters to Durango. It's the place he loves. It's filled with the people who are incredibly friendly. And he also has a daughter who lives here. When we asked him why he stayed here, he said, "It's a beautiful place. I was fortunate enough to make a living here. The climate is wonderful. The people are friendly. And we tolerate dogs and cats." Jaime and Marcos Wisner. Wisner. I said that wrong. Right here, folks. Marcos is a 5th-generation Durangoan. And like so many younger residents here, really found it difficult to find his place in this town when he grew up, both financially and just in life in general. After graduation, he traveled the world working as a cook and cooking for 8 years really extensively. According to the Herald food columnist, his resume reads like a who's who of where to be seen dining. New York City's Torrisi. My pronunciation here is struggling, sorry y'all. Jean Georges, and 11 Madison Park. California's Hermosa? And Napa's restaurant at Meadowood. Finally, he landed a 4-month stint in Copenhagen at Noma, a restaurant ranked among the top 10 in the world. Just over 2 years ago, he decided to come back to Durango, determined to bring something new and innovative to this town that he loves. He and his father initially started The Box, which many of you know is a food truck, which led to their starting 11th Street Station downtown, a food collective he and Jaime launched in October of 2017. Jaime was born in Mexico City and came to Durango for a week. 40 years later, he is still here. He's earned a few degrees from FLC, spent 25 years in the travel business, worked in real estate, sold travel, and in 1988, he bought that corner property where 11th Street Station is now. He bought out of foreclosure, lucky duck with Durango Real Estate. He has 4 sons, Brendan, Colin, Taylor, and of course Marcos. They all live here except for Taylor, although Marcos swears he's going to be back before too long. In 1917, that corner property was a gas station, which is what inspired the decor of 11th Street Station. And their food collective opened in October to immediate popularity. This father-son team is eager to help local chefs and be a catalyst for change in this town. And last but not least, we have Marc Katz. Marc and his wife Jane, who is here somewhere, left Seattle 28 years ago looking for a better place to live. They traveled south and east, and Durango's as far as they made it. So a little bit like Duane, we all kind of get stuck here in the best of ways. Once here, everything just clicked, and they chose to make Durango their home. He did have one moment of doubt, heading down the highway near the hole in the wall, which, when you see hole in the wall, you get a little doubt, where he thought, what in the hell am I doing? Move proved beneficial. When he first moved here, he owned a computer training company, which he operated for 10 years. When the 2000 tech bust, he started looking for a new career, and his brother Jeff proposed that they start a credit card service sales company, which many of you know was Mercury Payment Systems, which he eventually sold to Vantiv. Marc purchased about 1,600 acres on Ewing Mesa and the Purgatory Nordic Center property, and is in, again, early retirement, spending his time focusing on ways that land and his experiences can help build and improve Durango. Mark and Jane have 2 children, one who currently lives in Durango and one who's currently living in Laos. And as he said, more than any other place I've been, this place feels like home, and I feel connected to this place. I think we can all agree. So as Shane mentioned, each speaker is going to get about 10 minutes. You guys will see me flashing cards if they get a little long. And then we'll have 15 minutes for Q&A at the end where we can Q&A all 3 of them. So without any further ado, if you would silence your cell phones. Awesome. Thank you. And we'll let Duane Smith take the floor.
May I sit down or do you want me to get up?
You can do whatever is the most comfortable for you, please.
At my age, I'll sit right here if you don't mind. That's okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I was asked to do a little history, and I might tell you why I studied Durango history. When I came down here, okay. How's that? Good, thank you. Shucks, my students never told me they couldn't hear me. You guys, have you checked your hearing lately? I don't know. Anyway, when I came here in 1964 to teach at Fort Lewis College after it moved in from Hesperus, I suddenly found out that there was no real history of Durango. The Daughters of the American Revolution had interviewed a lot of people, and I'm certainly glad they did, but they had thrown it together, and it just wasn't really a history. It was a lot of interviews, but it wasn't a Durango history. So I stumbled onto this, and I thought, golly, that'd be a good thing to write. And so I started researching, and among the things I used the newspapers, and we have had a lot of newspapers in town over the years. Amazingly, this has been a dead end for quite a few newspaper editors, but the one we had that was best of all in the 19th and early 20th century was Dave Day. He came down from URA. His whole point was to raise, as he said, raise hell, and he did raise hell. He got it under everybody before it was all over, but his newspaper is one of the best ones to read. I don't imagine some people from the 1890s in that period of time would like to know that we know what Dave Day said about them, whether it was true or not. He just published it. Truth didn't bother him too much. Well, anyway, when I came, we didn't have a history. So I looked around. Do we have a history? We do. The Herald had records. The Southwest Center was getting started. I used newspapers. I interviewed old-timers. I interviewed people who came here in the 1880s. They were still alive when I first started to do this back in the 1960s. So I used just about everything I could possibly run into, photographs, anything that would tell me something about the history of this fascinating town, and we are a fascinating town. Don't let people tell you otherwise. One thing, if we could have sat here for, well, starting with the Pueblo people, Anasazi, prehistoric Puebloans, whatever you want to call them, then coming all the way up here, the entire American West passed us by up this valley. And it's really, we should be proud of that fact. It was all here at one time. We managed to save a lot, and we even saved some of the buildings, which I think is excellent. So we get a good feel for the past, and you can see how people, what they wanted to have for their homes. And we were a town, unlike a lot of the mining camps. We were here because of the smelter and because of mining in Silverton and Lake City and all. But the early settlers wanted to stay here permanently, and that was their intention. So if you start to think about it for a moment, the Spanish were here, the French came through, the fur trappers came through, the army came through, the Utes are already here, and some other tribes came in at various times. In the 1859 gold rush, some people thought that there was gold in the San Juans. They were absolutely right, but this was really isolated in 1859 when you think that the nearest settlements were back in Kansas, Nebraska, and out in Utah, in California, so they just didn't stick. But anyway, off we go. People did come in and out. They tried to pan, if you can believe it, they tried to pan gold out of the Animas River. And much of it was fool's gold, or what is called iron pyrite. And the way you can tell the difference is iron pyrite floats because you can break it off with your finger, but gold doesn't float. unless it's in your pocket and it floats right out usually. But anyway, so in the 1870s, the rush was on. We had just a mineral treasure house here: gold, silver, copper, uranium, tungsten, coal, and coal is what made us here tonight. Coal was all around this area. It's needed in mining. It's needed in smelting. It's why they built the smelter here. So off we go. There was another town here first called Anima City. It's the northern end of the town now. Anima City did the fatal thing. It refused to understand that history can really, if you don't pay attention to Cleo, the muse of history, she'll kick you in the shins. And Anima City said, to the railroad said it was coming to Anima City, and the railroad asked for a depot and some land, and Anima City said, poo-poo to that idea, and you have to come here because you're the only city. And they completely misread history. Here's your lesson, because the DNRG built its own towns, like Durango, Alamosa, and others. So Anima City is no more. Unless you drive up Main Street, you can tell. It's just right north of the fairgrounds. Well, on we go then. So the San Juans blossomed and boomed, and people came in, but you need to have a railroad. You can't have... Oh, I saw that. Okay, it's flashing. How much time do I have? Okay, we're in the ballpark. Onward here. Durango, Anima City disappeared. The railroad came. That's what made this town. You all know that. Still does. Early World War I came along. We had some racial problems in Durango because the German Americans, were they loyal or not? We had problems here in town. And there was some really strong feelings against German Americans, which was very sad. Then after World War I, we got hit with the flu. The flu was probably the worst epidemic that ever hit this town. 1918, 1920, it was all over the country. It was a flu, which was the flu of all flus, you might say. It's not easy to joke about it because you could be perfectly well in the morning and dead by night. That's a flu which we've never seen again and hope we never will, except it's possible we could, well, I won't go into that. You can read the paper because every so often someone writes in about that. Well, 1930s, 20s, we had bootlegging. We had the Klan, unfortunately. The Klan burned crosses up on Smelter Mountain. Bootlegging, we were a center of bootlegging. I remember I was talking about that one night, and some people got very offended, but indeed we were. Then the 1930s came along, really hard times in Durango. Coal mining we had coal mining, and coal mining just doesn't grab you, does it? I mean, not like gold and silver. Uranium doesn't grab me either, particularly, for that matter. Okay, so World War II comes along, where Durango is patriotic. After the war, tourism built up because a lot of people came down from Denver via the train or driving, which wasn't that easy in the 1940s, especially because gas was rationed. But people came through here, they saw it, they wanted to come back, and so Durango's boom took off then. Uranium, everything else came in, and tourism started to pick up. Fort Lewis came in here in the 1950s. Some people opposed that, by the way. They were very much concerned about what these college boys might do to the young Durango senior high school girls. And it was really quite funny. Some of the letters to the Herald and other papers were really concerned about, I guess colleges had a bad reputation at that time. I don't know if it's any better, but so in the 1960s, then the colleges of town, tourism picks up, growth. Where's the person showing me the sign? Oh, there you are. Oh, I finally, don't get so far back. My eyes aren't all that good. Okay, hastening forward with great vigor. Period of growth in tourism. The Utes come into town. This has been their land, but now they're kind of strangers to Durango. 1970s, growth. 1980s, 90s, more growth. People begin to worry that perhaps we got too many people in Durango. And so there was tension underneath that the cost of living is going up, as you all know. And that's caused trouble. And Durango's not the town it was when we started. It's the town where you got to be fairly well-to-do, let's face it. And I know the chamber won't like that. Well, anyway, 2017, we're entering in a new era. And if I might say, it'll be the next time the Cubs win the World Series. Thank you very much. Who wants this? Okay.
All right, thanks, Duane. If you guys couldn't tell, I was giving Duane a hard time that he might run long. So up next, to speak about kind of the current situation in Durango and why they have opened a new restaurant are Jaime and Marcos Wisner.
Good evening, and thank you again for all of you coming on out and listening to a bunch of yackers. But I think the best way to kind of roll this in is I've been here for 40 years, and Duane took you across a spectrum of 150 years or more. So I'll just kind of bring you in where I showed up in 1977, and you'd get down to the New York Bakery, and that's kind of where everything happened. It's where you found out who was getting together with who, and who the new politicians are going to be in town, and that's really the word of mouth back then. So coming up here, it was mentioned. I came up here for a week to visit a high school buddy from Mexico City that I'd gone to high school with, and ended up staying and finding that this was really the place that was calling me, even though I was been raised in a city of 8 million people. And so attending Fort Lewis College, 6 years there, getting a couple degrees, one in business, one in accounting. Rolling into the travel business. When I was still up there, these guys started a wholesale company and wanted somebody from Mexico that could go ahead and set up ground contacts for them in Cancun, which is relatively new, Puerto Vallarta, Acapulco, some other places, Akumal. So I started doing a little bit of work for them. They liked what I did, so I ended up working for them. They unfortunately went under, and talked to the bank and ended up buying the retail business from the bank out of foreclosure. And so that allowed me the window to raise 4 boys in this wonderful town that I continue to embrace, and have seen the changes of going from kind of a redneck town that it was back in the 70s into this new Cosmo town that we have now. In raising my boys, I've always tried to have and embrace their passions. Education was always in my mind what you want to have them go and do, but I've learned over time that their passions are a lot stronger. I have a boy that's a barber, another one with the fire department here in town. Marcos had passion for cooking and traveled the world. I have another one that's an artist up in Montana. So
all he wanted was a college degree out of one of the 4 of us.
Well, but the light of it all is they're all embracing what they love, and Durango has been able to bring that to them, or they've been able to bring that back to Durango over time. So I had this travel agency for about 25 years. Internet kind of went out. I had been in a little bit of clothing business and researching stuff for Bula a while back. People that remember, I was trying to get maquila set up for them down in Mexico. Got into a grocery store business in Farmington, developments, and my next idea was, okay, what do we do with this corner that we have down here in the heart of Durango? And my idea was, of course, well, you put a building on it. And my son was, no way. Or sell it. And so we started playing with the idea of, okay, what do we do with the corner? How can we make it work for us? How can we do something together? So Marcos and I traveled around a little bit to go look at a lot of different business models that were out there. And we found out that we could do a hybrid of what people were doing with food trucks. And what we were looking at was being able to embrace the history of the corner, being able to bring in Marcos's culinary background, and then create a the old New York bakery, you know, the old history of bringing people that haven't, you know, that live around here. I walk into restaurants now and I don't know anybody. I used to walk into a restaurant, I knew everybody. And this corner is creating that again. And that's kind of the passion of doing it and making it happen. So that's the direction that we're going with it. So in coming up with this hybrid of a deal, we spent 9 months going around, cutting front ends off of cars, getting old gas pumps out of junkyards. I don't know if you guys have been in there or not. If you go into the bathrooms, the sinks are out of transmission casings and water, old gas pumps and stuff like that. Everything that we put in there is original and has a lot of the passion that we've brought along with the experience that we want to share with everybody that is local, along with bringing it, being a community-centered area. So with that said, I kind of want to turn it over to Marcos because he's more of the present, and he can talk a little bit about his background and our passion about how this corner has evolved to what it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, and the main theme here, you know, is like, why do we call it home? I mean, growing up here, I think like growing up here, you can be someone that just take things for granted, you know, especially being raised by an awesome guy like this. You know, he gets you out there doing everything, doing it all, and you end up like despising this. That like you're ending your high school career, and you're like, I need to get out, I need to go, I need like big city, I need something different, and you know, it took me about 8 years of being gone and coming back and being in this battle of, you know, like, what do I love Durango? Does it have what I want? Does it have what I long for? And I think after about 8 years, it is a town that you really fall in love with. It has everything I care about, everything I love, you know, the mountains, the community, the people, my friends that I have. I mean, it's just, it's so much better than anything I've experienced over everywhere I've lived, all over the world, from New York to Europe, San Francisco, all those places, and it just feels like home. It really is that place. And I think what my battle was it was just, I always I loved it so much, I felt I wanted to bring something back. I didn't want to just come back and feel like, well, Durango's always there for me. You know, I wanted to be like, you know, hey Durango, look what I got for you. And I feel after about, you know, 8 years, it just really put my head to the grindstone in these, you know, world-class kitchens and, you know, garnering as much experience and cultural experience and ideas and everything that I could, that I finally felt ready to come back to Durango. And I mean, just the serendipitous, you know, like fortuity that we have, that he owned the corner that he has, and that we're pursuing the concept that we are. I mean, it really is just something special. And I mean, I'm just so thankful to call this place home and like be where I am right now, doing what I'm doing what I love, and sharing it with a great community like this. And I mean, that's really kind of all I have to say about that. Are we at? I think a lot of it is just you know, just I'm not just my culinary background, because I'm not even cooking right now. I think it's more of a philosophical foundation that I've developed through working with people like Renee Redzepi, working with chefs like Daniel Hume, and being disciplined in these manners that, you know, you can, you're not pushed to those levels here in Durango, I guess, on some demeanor. You know, when you're in a place like New York City, it's just highly competitive. It really pushes a lot in your face, and I think any kid that did grow up here needs to be pushed into some sort of circumstance like that to really be grateful and humble about what a beautiful place this is. You know, otherwise you're just going to take it for granted, and you'll never want to come back. And you know, I think I'm very happy with what me and my dad have been able to collectively pull together for this town and bring to this community, and hopefully it excites a lot of other ideas and a lot of other individuals, and hopefully we see this, not only you know, this business model grow into other places or other venues or in other ways, shapes, fashion. You know, I really would like to see, you know, what we're doing be a catalyst for more than just food and beverage, but for just economics and small business in general for this town.
And last but for sure not least, Marc Katz is going to talk about kind of how he sees the future of Durango and things he's working on with the city and other folks to move Durango forward, and get your heads thinking about some questions, and we'll answer those in just a second.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and you know, it's nice. Durango is really the first place that I ever lived that had the sense of community that I was looking for. You know, I grew up on Long Island, which is sort of a huge suburban area. It's all spread out and without any kind of central place for people to collect and feel like they have, you know, feel that sense of home. And I've lived in Silicon Valley in California, and I've lived in Seattle. And it wasn't until we came here that I lived in a community. Maybe it's, you know, it's a combination of all of a lot of things, but it's a community that's the right size to feel a sense of community. And I think there's a lot of nice people here. And, you know, we're nice because we're enjoying ourselves with the weather that's here and the mountains and everything else. But anyway, was very happy to make my home here, and I was very lucky to, you know, get involved in something that allowed me to retire at a pretty early age. I think I was, you know, I was in, I think I've been retired since I was about 51 or 52, something like that, and I never was very good at being, you know, being retired takes a certain amount of skill. You have to figure out what to do with yourself, and so I spent a lot of time, you know, hiking with the dog, and one of my favorite hikes is to go up to the top of Smelter Mountain. And from the top of Smelter Mountain, it's a wonderful view. You can see all of town, and you can look over and look at Ewing Mesa. It's, you know, how many of you guys are very, familiar, know exactly where Ewing Mesa is and what it looks like? Okay, and so that's probably half the people here, and you guys are old timers, so. But there's the Ewing Mesa property is it's a very interesting property because from the valley floor, it's practically invisible, and a lot of people don't know it's there. So this is a view from Smelter Mountain, I think, from the top of Smelter Mountain, and you can see over here the north part of town. That's Main Street going up north, and this is the sort of south part of town here, and over there, Ewing Mesa. It's really, very much like Fort Lewis Mesa. It's at the same kind of altitude as Fort Lewis Mesa. It's just further south and around the corner, right? And it's very intriguing because it's got an awful lot of flat ground on it with nothing on it, right? I first found out about the property when we were looking for a place to build a really big building. You can see now that the Mercury building is something like 80,000 square feet, and we, got lucky finding a space down near the mall to build that, but at one point we had absolutely no idea where we could build that kind of building. And we looked at Ewing Mesa and met the owners, the Potsky family, the grandkids of Noel Potsky, and we got to look, we decided not to put the building there, but 5 years later, when I was retired and I would go up Smelter Mountain, I'd look back over there and I'd think about it, and that property almost got sold several times during our big real estate boom before 2008. It was under contract a few times, and but every time they would consider the full cost of doing something up there, they'd kind of get stuck because it has a few, there's very little infrastructure up there. There's one good road, there's not two, which you really need two roads to do a big development, and there isn't currently water or sewer up there. It's not part of the city, it's part of the county. Anyway, the property always intrigued me, and the owners kept also, calling me, and ooh, I'm running out of time fast. Okay. Well, anyway, so I might have to cut to the chase. So Jane and I bought the property. It's probably been about 5 years now, with the idea that that property could house some really cool public assets for the town. That the county fairgrounds could be sited up there. That if you look, can you take me to the next slide, like that aerial slide? So this is a picture of the property taken from an airplane, which gives you sort of a better sense of how it lays out. But essentially, my dream for the property would be that at the north end of the property, you could have a concert venue, someplace like a la Telluride or Pagosa Springs, a place to do summer festivals, summer concerts, or I don't know, maybe it's not restricted to just summer, but big, a place to do concerts. The central part of the property is where the county is currently planning a fair they would like to move the fairgrounds. If they had plenty of money, they would be ready to get on with it. But as it is, they're in the planning process and getting to the phase where they're going to start to have to figure out how to afford that and where the money could come from. And the south end of the property could be wonderful for city recreation. A bike park that connects up with the Horse Gulch Trails system, which is right nearby. Or any other number, there's plenty of other city recreational needs that could be sited up there, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. The city is currently just starting to do some planning around what recreational assets might make sense to go up there. So that's my dream is to donate the property so that it could be turned into our central park, with these three kind of uses. It's the challenge with this is, I think, purely financial, right? I think very few people have ever come up to me and said, that's a terrible idea. We should put something other than that up there. We should put houses up there, or that was the original idea, but I like my idea. I think it's nicer, and I do think there's a tremendous case to be made that the economic development from those three uses would be very well aligned with what a lot of us see as the future of the town, the type of economy that we would like to have. We'd like to have tourists, people coming for summer concerts. We would like to have people coming for horse shows and dog shows and all the kind of more rural agricultural activities that could be done at the fairgrounds if it was bigger and more suitable than our current fairgrounds. And we obviously could use additional recreational facilities, and the city has a long list of those that they would love to plan if they had the money. So the real challenge is going to be, as a community, can we find the consensus on what should happen up there? Can we find ways of funding it? Can we get grant money from GOCO and other grantors? And can we decide amongst ourselves that we're gonna pay more in taxes, or somehow fund this in order to make this happen? But anyway, that's my dream, that's my vision, and I'm so I guess I'm not really that retired because I'm working on this, but it's a long, slow process. So I have time to ski and do other things too. So don't feel bad for me. So, thank you.
Excellent, thanks. So we covered past, present, and future in 30 minutes, and I'm sure you guys have some questions. I'm going to walk around with the microphone. If anyone wants to ask any one of our panelists any questions, then yes.
So my question is to Jaime and Marcos. The first time that I was at the 11th Street Station Bar, I loved that the bartender was Ernie's grandson. I mean, it's so cool. So which one of you were inspired to have it really reflect what that corner had been back in the 50s?
It wasn't either one of us. It was both of us going out, looking, and everything kind of unfolding. You start with an idea and a concept, and you talk about it, and then you've got to go ahead and put it on paper. And as you put it on paper, you start to visualize a little bit of what you're wanting to do with the project, and then as you're doing it, it evolves into a whole other area of growth or design and vision as it's coming along. You want to add a little to that?
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it's just a very fortuitous thing, the fact that it used to be a gas station, the fact that we went with the name Ernie's, which is an awesome name for a bar, and then the fact that it tied itself to the 50s, which is just a really cool era, and it's got some really beautiful decor and just some really cool ideas to play off of. I mean, we really kind of, I think we got really lucky, but at the same point, I mean, it wasn't like we just woke up one day and were like, yeah, Ernie's gas station, 1950s theme. I mean, it each piece kind of, assembles itself and kind of leads you into that next move.
One other thing is Ernie's granddaughter grew up in our house as one of our kids. We were kind of the house where we had all the extra kids, and his granddaughter was one of them. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, this question is for Duane. The Durango Herald recently had on their homepage voting what to name the Animas Valley. And I was just wondering, what would you name it? Or the North Main?
Pardon me, what was the last one?
It was the North Main, like what to name the North Main part of Durango?
Well, to tell you the truth, I kind of like Animas City myself, but I might be the only person in town.
My question goes to Mark. So, I think it would be better to have a mountain bike park in the middle, just because more hills. So, yeah.
That's an interesting suggestion. Yeah. You know, the area that has the most hills is the wooded part of the property, not the flat part. And that wooded part is going to be all for open space and for mountain bike trails. And there is a need, and there's a need for beginner mountain bikers to have a real flat place. And so I think everybody who's talked about this would love to see a flat trail that goes all around the perimeter of the property for beginners and for people with little kids and so on and so forth. Would that be okay?
I want to thank all panelists for being here, and thank you for being givers rather than takers, for coming into our community and envisioning what it can be, and then deciding you're going to make the investment to make the difference rather than just let it happen, see what happens. I believe Durango is unique. I've been here 23 years now, and the size of the town, everybody should recognize that this is the size of the town that everybody can really make a difference. You know, in a large city, you have to go with the flow. You have to accept what happens. Market forces make things happen. Market forces don't necessarily take the city in the right direction, but they take it where the market takes it for the short-term benefit. We have the opportunity to see this size to really make decisions, and it's sort of a collective whole of what we can orchestrate through city council and county commissioners, but it's also individuals who take that approach of giving rather than taking and saying, I want to make this place better. As I envision it, I want this community to be a town where my son can get the best education here, can go off to the best college, get the best education, have greatest skills, and then be able to come back to Durango and have a place to use those skills. And that's what I want to see this town become.
Any other questions? I know they're out there.
May I jump in just for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, Duane.
No one asked this question. I really wish someone had. When I was interviewing people in town, I told people I wanted to interview people from all walks of life, all occupations. And as some of you know, cover the little gentleman's ears down in front, but we were, along with Silverton, we were the red light district in this area. And coming out of Boulder at CU, one of the things graduate students always wanted to do was to interview a prostitute. And I finally did, Nellie Spencer. And let me tell you, there was some gentlemen in town who didn't want me to talk to her. Some of the movers and shakers had utilized Nellie's and some of the other girls' services. So that made Durango history to me a little more human. We came from all walks of life, all types of occupations, and Nellie was really intelligent. If she had a better opportunity in life back at the turn of the century, 1900s, she could have been really a good businesswoman. Well, she was. So anyway, now that I've lowered to the level of the talk, I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Well, I'll share a little story. When Duane and Mark and I had gotten together at the Herald to talk a little bit about the diaries and stuff like that, one of the things, I'd taken a class from Duane up at the college, so he doesn't remember me somehow. But we were talking a little bit about the history of the corner and stuff, and I don't know if you guys had ever heard of Olga Little. But that was Ernie's aunt. So just a little bit more history that ties into the corner. And since we were talking about that, Lorraine, that I don't know if you guys have known Lorraine over the years, she paints the windows around town. And Lorraine lives in Olga Little's house, her cabin up in La Plata Canyon. And she went ahead and gave me a picture of Olga Little walking right in front. It was Fiesta Days in 1940, and she's got her pack of mules behind her, and you've got the Conoco station in the background. So just a little tidbit.
Now that you mentioned Olga, I might just say one more thing. I went out to interview her, and she looked at me and she said, "Smith, you're too thin," and she cooked me supper. I had just had lunch. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but I didn't dare say anything, so I had supper. She was quite an interview. I mean, if I would come west in the 19th century, I'd want Olga Little right beside me. We'd have gotten through.
Question. Yes.
I guess this is for anybody, but on the north end of Ewing Mesa, there's a bunch of remnants of former structures. Just from a historical aspect, I was wondering, does anybody know what they were? Did they have something to do with the coal mine up there? Or there's concrete pads and,
I had always assumed it was part of the coal mining history. I was up there and looked at it. It's really funny to me how we sort of pushed the coal mining part of our town history just aside, as I mentioned earlier. And it's really coal mining along with the coal was what brought us here. The gold and silver took people to Silverton. We didn't have gold and silver. We had coal, and it was worth more than Silverton's gold and silver.
Huh. Okay.
Any others?
Anyway, I was wondering, aside from including one of your wonderful books, what you might recommend for reading about the mining industry in the Four Corners area.
Mining industry in the Four Corners area, I hate to say it, coal mining, you're looking at me. Because people just didn't think coal mining, it was there. There was coal mining in Pennsylvania, there's coal mining in Illinois. They had seen coal mining. Gold and silver mining was instant wealth. Everyone wants to be Horace Tabor, and I guess some men wanted to have another baby doe. But coal mining never caught people's attention, which is too bad. More coal was ever taken out than gold and silver. More accidents. It was deadly. Ever been in a coal mine? And I've been in some of the ones around here, and it's, even if it's supposed to be clean, you get the whiff of gas every so often. And I always tell my students, stay out of coal mines. I don't care how attractive it looks. And some of them idiots went in anyway, which is probably partly my fault because I did too, but I took some people in with me.
Well, maybe we can put a wind farm up on Ewing Mesa.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. We're keeping pretty strictly to our schedule so we don't take up too much of everybody's time. So a couple things. We do have the Herald booth over here with Lauren from Circulation and Abby, who's helped us organize Durango Diaries. Sign up for more emails about upcoming Durango Diaries events or for news from the Herald. And we really hope you guys will come on January 29th when we're going to talk about Snowdown and February 14th when we're going to talk about love. If you guys